Maybe this is Ford saying, hey, manufacturers, we don't have to be boring. We don't have to keep delivering off-road vehicles. You know, this thing has got lockers, it's got suspension lift, bigger tires, bigger offset wheels and stuff. Ford's actually listening to the consumer, which is rare for a manufacturer, and I'm all about it.
Since 2022, when you think of off-road SUV, you've pretty much always thought of the Ford Everest lineup, up until recently at least, when Toyota incepted their brand new 250 series Prado. Now Ford knew that that was going to shake the cage and rattle some feathers, and that's, well, exactly why they've released this. This is the brand new Ford Everest Tremor, and it is simply delightful. I'm going to run you through exactly what makes this car just so special and why I think it's such an impressive option for you guys out there, the four-wheel drive fraternity. Now, Ford have invited us to some pretty cool locations. We've driven these things in South Africa, and now we're here in the beautiful Yarra Valley, about to take this on an off-road test. Now, before you jump into the comments, no, this isn't sponsored ad sort of BS. I'm not getting paid, I've been up since 3 AM, I'm just here because I love this product. And secondly, if you want a boring corporate review about how many cup holders this thing has and how nice the paintwork is, this isn't the review for you. This is a real, down-to-earth, off-road Ford Everest Tremor test. Let's get into it. Now, before you guys dive in and assume that this is just another bit of a body kit thrown on a standard Everest, it couldn't be further from the truth. Not only do you get this gorgeous exclusive color, but you get a whole bunch of off-road features, external upgrades, and modifications that are going to enable you to get off the beaten track that little bit further out of the box, which is so impressive. It's really cool to see that Ford are listening to the consumer here and going, hey, they're already going to fit larger tires on a lift kit, let's just do that from factory. That being said, there are a couple of body kit add-ons to this car that I do think really add to its prowess and how it looks. Starting up the front, we have that unique Tremor grille, which I think is really cool. It's sort of reminiscent of the Ford Ranger Raptor in that it's all blacked out, but it doesn't have those sort of bold Ford letters on there. You'll see some auxiliary lighting as well integrated into the middle of those C matrix clamp headlights, which actually are really impressive. And it almost means you wouldn't have to rush out and go and fit a light bar or driving lights at the front of this car. And that's really exciting. Down here, you'll see an optioned stealth bumper. Now, this is a controversial one. Is it a bull bar? Not really. Is it better than the factory bumper? I'd say so. It can't take a winch, but you can mount things like aerials, spotlights, driving lights, etc. to it. It also has a track cam up the front as well, so when you're driving those technical tracks, it's got a camera showing you exactly where your wheels are and what the track's doing in front of your eyes. Now let's talk off-road prowess. The Everest Tremor has got a rock crawl mode on the interior. Now we're going to talk about that later when we're doing our in-car section, when we actually get to off-road test this vehicle, but that's exciting. It's the first time we've seen this intercepted into the Everest range. And what you can expect from the rock crawl mode is using that dial in the middle of the console, it's going to automatically lock your rear diff, automatically put the car into 4 low, and it's actually going to dampen that throttle response so that when you are rock hopping and trying to crawl up these technical sort of tracks, the throttle response is, I guess, lessened so that you're not getting that jolty, aggressive sort of feeling in the car. It's going to help not only protect the driveline, but give you a lot more control when you are doing that technical sort of wheeling. If we come down here, this is where it starts to get exciting. This car is 26 mils higher than the original road-going Everests, which is fantastic. And they've actually used a really cool piggyback style external reservoir Bilstein shock to not only give a more controlled ride, but also get that longer stroke in the shock and give you that tiny bit more articulation, whilst also being able to handle pretty much any off-road terrain or corrugations you can throw at it. Obviously, we've used Bilstein in just about every build on this channel and we love them, so it's really cool to see Bilstein working with an OEM manufacturer like Ford. Plus, having that remote reservoir means you're going to get more oil capacity, it's going to keep the gas and the oil separate, it's going to help with heat dissipation, it's going to stop shock fade and all that sort of thing. Coming down here, you'll see a lovely set of all-terrains. It is cool to see that Ford have gone ahead and fitted a slightly larger all-terrain over the factory tyre. And what this suspension and what this tyre size combination allows from an aftermarket modification point of view is that you could get this car engineered for 33-inch tyres and a 3-inch lift now, which is fantastic news for those that do want to take it to that next step. And you simply can't do that with the out-of-the-box road-going Ford Everest range. The other cool thing you'll see is Tremor-specific alloy wheels, and they are pushing the wheel track about 30 mils wider than a standard Everest. Again, meaning that you can legally opt in some really cool aftermarket rims if that's how you're so inclined, and get that really staunch, wider footprint out of the wheelbase of this vehicle. Plus, these black flares to keep it all legal, I think are a really cool stylistic choice, and going to mean you're going to be able to cover those larger wheels and tyres if you do so go and opt for that. Now, things that you know and love from the Everest range already. It's got the 3-litre V6 turbo diesel engine, 184 kilowatts, 600 newton meters of power, 10-speed automatic that we know and love from the F-Truck, from the Ranger Raptor, from the previous model Everests. These things are bulletproof. A little bit agricultural and a little bit old school tech, but you know you're going to get the longevity out of them. These things are just going to go and go and go. And by having that torquey motor under the bonnet, paired with a 3.5 ton towing capacity and around 680 kilos of payload, it means even when fully loaded, towing or passenger wise, man, you're sorted. You're going to have power for days, and that 10-speed gearbox is just going to keep throwing gears at you and giving you that control. So it doesn't matter if you're going up the Toowoomba range or you're just cruising down to Sydney on the M1, this thing is going to have power and gears in spades. Now, I did just rattle off a whole bunch of power figures and numbers on this V6 3-litre turbo diesel Everest motor, but I wanted to jump in here and talk from a full drive modifier's point of view. Now, it's all well and good to know the torque figures, power, etc., and all that sort of crap, but what you want to know, and what is going to set us apart from other reviewers, is actually getting in here, having a look at the available real estate and space, giving you some ideas of what you could do under here, and just how, for lack of a better term, you might be when you do go to modify these things. Now, there's no denying these modern common rail, brand spanking new turbo diesels are busy, very full of technology, and a little bit scary to look at. But that being said, you've got a huge amount of space left, right, and in front of this engine, which means basic maintenance and servicing and modifying these things, you're going to be able to do yourself. It's not like a VDJ engine in a 79 series where it's massive and you can't even get your hand down the side of the engine bay. Another really exciting thing I'm seeing is a massive empty void behind the airbox, but in front of the brake master cylinder, which looks suspiciously a lot like it's going to be able to fit a second auxiliary battery quite easily, which is nice because it means you don't have to put it in the cab, you don't have to worry about trying to fit large cables and that sort of thing in through the cab and under the carpet, and you're not going to lose that boot space. You can put the battery, which is, 20 to 40 kilos in most instances, up here over that front axle, and you don't have to think about it being in the boot of your car. Another really cool design feature. Now, I've spoken about this in previous videos when we've talked about the Everest, and I'm going to talk about it again because I do really like this, is these guards are a suspended type guard. Basically, there's a big, almost like a tube frame that runs the entire way around this car. Now, I'd say that's for a couple of reasons, and to be quite frank, I don't know, but I'm assuming that's because it makes it a really safe vehicle when you do get into a front end collision. But what Ford have gone and done is, instead of mounting things to this outer guard, they've actually mounted everything to this large structural beam that runs the entire way around. We're talking things like, your washer bottles, your horns, a whole bunch of bracketry, a whole bunch of relays and that sort of thing. And by getting that weight and getting those accessories not mounted to the guards is going to help reduce NVH in the vehicle. So it's just a little thing that Ford's done here to try and make this as pleasant of a vehicle as possible. There's nothing worse than getting in a car that you're about to do 10 hours in and there's just noise, rattles, wind, etc. And Ford have done a really good job at stamping all that out. You're not going to have to go in and worry about aftermarket sound deadening in a car like this, which is really nice to see. And when it comes to styling, Ford really have hit the nail on the head. Not only do we get this unique Conquer Grey, which is specific only to the Tremor range, but they've gone ahead and done, black V6 badging. You've got your sort of bronzed out Tremor badging down here. We've got black mirror caps, black door handles as well, these black flares, black alloy wheels, and this sort of rugged off-road side step that feels sort of like it's been Raptor coated. So it's going to be grippy and be able to withstand pretty much anything you're going to throw at it. Now, coming out the back of the vehicle, did we really want to see something a little bit different to the factory Everest? Probably. It could have been nice. Maybe a little bit of a rear bar or something like that. But again, 90% of this car's life is going to be spent dropping the kids off, going to the shops, daily driving, and that 10% off-road. So they've given you the ability and the adaptability to really change it up and make it your own. We've got a stack of technology up the back here. We've got a camera up in this center bezel that looks directly down at the tow ball, which is great because A, it makes hitching up a trailer fantastic, but it also gives you great visibility off-road. If you're hung up on something and you can't quite see, maybe you don't want to get out of the car and leave it unsecured, or you even can't get out of the car because you're in a deep rut, you have cameras pretty much everywhere on this car, so you know exactly what's going on at all times. The back of these cars is such a great stylistic thing. 3.5 ton towing, the factory fitted Ford tow pack, pre-wired brake trailer plug. This thing really just ticks every box. It's so hard to criticize when it's as good as this. And the fact that Ford are listening to the consumer and giving us an off-road product that is really quite capable out of the box, it's super exciting. And yeah, cool, maybe they're just dipping their toe in the water, similar to what they did with the old Ranger Raptor. People said, look, this could be improved on, but it's getting there. And now look, we have a 400 horsepower, 10-speed paddle shift race truck. And maybe that's what we're seeing here. Maybe this is Ford's attempt at dipping their toe in the water for a hardcore off-road SUV. And in years to come, we're gonna see this get more and more rugged, more and more refined, and more capable. I think the world is our oyster. Ford have certainly got the money and the means to do it, and I'm certainly the man to test it. Let's quickly talk about the interior, and then we can go off-road. Now, the inside of a Ford Everest has always been a really nice place to be. And that's coming from someone that's owned Land Cruisers and Patrols with $20,000 custom interiors, and this pretty much fits on all of them. In the Tremor, you get these specific ebony leather embossed seats with the Tremor badging all around it. And speaking of, the Tremor badge in the seats actually matches the Tremor badge on the side of the car and the back of the car as well, which is a really nice stylistic choice. You've got a whole bunch of leather and soft touch finishes around the cabin space as well. You have that steering wheel that's got all the functionality you could ever hope and dream of. One thing that I wish this car did have, it doesn't, is paddle shifts. I don't know why I feel like it needs it. I guess at that sort of high 70s to low 80s price point, it would be cool to see that incepted from the Ranger Raptor. But again, I'm just being pedantic. You've got your factory integrated brake controller for your trailers. You've got your 12-inch digital dash in the center here, and also an 8-inch digital dash in front of the driver. Again, when you go and choose the drive mode, it's going to pop up all the information you need in front of you on those digital dashes, and you can see exactly what the car's doing at all times. This infotainment system has got Ford Sync technology, it's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, you can control your climate, you can control all your off-road cameras, your rear factory diff lock, everything like that, all from this screen, which I really love. Again, if you have that Ford Sync app, you can use your phone to connect to the car as well, and you can monitor a whole bunch of things. When you're not even in the car, you can do it from the comfort of your own house using your phone. You've got wireless charging, the stack of USB ports absolutely everywhere, and in the Tremor you have all-weather floor mats as well, which is nice. What Ford's doing with this car isn't trying to build a rock-crawling monster. What they're trying to do is get the consumer, get us four-wheel drivers, that one step closer to an out-of-the-box solution for that family trip. They don't want you to have to go and buy a four-wheel drive and go, far out, man, I've got to go buy shocks, I've got to go buy raised springs, I've got to get bigger wheels, bigger tires, I've got to get floor mats, I've got to get X, Y, and Z. This car has got all of that done for it. And don't get me wrong, you can still go and rip all this stuff out and put bigger stuff in there, but you don't have to now. With that locker, with the 4 low, with the 4 auto, with all of these driving modes, this is such a capable vehicle straight out of the box. And another cool feature, sort of like what we see in the Ranger Raptor, is we've got 5 pre-wired switches in the panel above my head. So you got 1 and 2 are on the high beams, 3, 4, and 5 are just on auxiliary power. So again, really cool. You don't have to go and drill holes in your dash and cut the dash up and destroy it, because you can just use the functionality that's here. Ford really are looking after us with this car, and I absolutely love it. Now, a couple of things we need to talk about. For starters, starting to sound a lot like a boomer giving a car review, and I don't like that. So I'd say it's just about time we kick this thing in the guts. We take it off-road. We're about 5 minutes from Mount Disappointment and Talangi and a whole bunch of really cool spaces. So I think an off-road test is in order. So let's go hit the tracks.
Hold up, wait a minute.
Now I know I said we were going off-road, but I just wanted to talk about one final feature that really does make this thing a bit of an animal off-road. Now if you follow these sort of accentuated curves down to the underside of the vehicle, you'll see not just those remote reservoir Bilstein shocks all the way around, but you'll see it's coil sprung in the rear with a Watts linkage. Now, we all know that coil springs are better for articulation, better for comfort, and this thing can still tow 3.5 ton, which is super exciting. But that Watts linkage is also going to help reduce the rear steer issues that a traditional panhard would have in it. So it's another step in the right direction in terms of giving you a really capable off-road vehicle straight out of the box. It's pretty much the exact same rear end as what we see in the Ranger Raptor, and that's here in an Everest. So if you think about it that way, you know you're getting a really cool off-road product, and it's going to be able to withstand not just any sort of off-road durability test that you whistling diesels out there are going to do, but you know it's going to be a comfortable everyday drive. Anyway, almost off-road time.
Okay, so we finally have stolen the keys to the new Ford Everest Tremor. Now, obviously, we're not going to be driving this Widowmaker or, you know, Gunshot or anything like that. It's a brand new $80,000 car, and I'm not quite prepared to destroy it just yet, but what we are doing is putting it through a couple of little ruddy obstacles and some wombat holes to really see what it can do and how the capabilities are of this thing. So first things first, what we're going to do is slip it into its brand new setting. Now that setting is rock crawl. So you can do that from the dial down here. It sets up the dash here in front of me. It says rock crawl. What that's going to do, put the car in a 4-low, lock the rear diff, and dampen the throttle response. So if you are rock crawling and you're doing that technical wheeling, you don't want a really highly responsive, sensitive pedal. You want it to sort of be spongy and a little bit forgiving so that you basically don't destroy your $80,000 Ford, you know what I'm saying? So we've got it rear locked. We've got a whole bunch of sort of, I guess, sensors and sort of radar system going in front of me as well, which is just telling me if there's an obstacle close by, which way I should steer. The other really cool thing about these is that there's cameras absolutely everywhere around this thing, including right at the front of the vehicle on the nose. So what you can do is actually use that as a bit of a guide for driving. Now, one thing I'm going to do is turn the parking sensors off because they are annoying, especially if you're in like a deep rut like what we are right now. But overall, I'm really liking these things. They're overall about 29 millimeters higher than a standard Everest. So it's a little bit of tyre and the rest is suspension. And basically what that means, sorry, I'm concentrating so I don't destroy Ford's car. Basically what that means is you get that little bit of additional ground clearance, you get that little bit of additional clearance under the diffs from the larger tyres as well. Just trying to steer away from this bank. A little bit technical through here. It's very narrow. I'm just looking at my spotter in front. Quite tight. I'm really liking this dampened throttle though. It's making life very easy. Overall, I love it. It's a really, really cool out of the box capable car. And the fact that you can go and put, you know, full size 33s, you can go and put a 3-inch lift in it, you can put some nice offset wheels on it and it can be engineered and legal. That's super cool. Plus those remote res bill stands are a little bit longer, a little bit better at controlling the dampening. So when you are on that rough stuff, it absolutely loves it. They do give it quite a stiff ride, which is pretty stereotypical of a Bilstein shock. But overall, super, super good. A couple of things that I would, if I had the opportunity, to change for the Tremor. Now the Raptor has front and rear lockers. The Tremor, like a lot of the Everest range, is just rear locked. If this had a front locker as well, it would be absolutely unstoppable. And the other thing is it's only got the 8-inch display in front of me on the dash. It still has the 12-inch infotainment sync system in the middle, but the Raptor has a full 12.4-inch display in front of the driver. Now, if this vehicle had that, plus a front locker, oh my God, it would be just absolutely perfect. But that being said, this comes in at around 15 to 20 grand cheaper than the Raptor, and about 10 grand cheaper or 12 grand cheaper, I'm gonna say, than the Platinum Everest, which is the more sort of luxury one, and you do get those trims. A couple of things worth mentioning about these cars as well is you can option them up with underbody protection too, which is good. So you can get factory fitted bash plates and all that sort of jazz. You can get the factory fitted stealth bar as well, which is cool, albeit it's sort of a alloy plastic composites, bit of a smart bar type design, but it does allow you to mount things like an aerial, driving lights, that sort of thing. Oh, it's tight against this tree. The other thing you can option up, it's a bit on in here. The other thing you can option in this is actually cooled seats. So you can get the cooled front seats and also heated rear seats. So you can actually get options like the heated rear seats. They're not even an option in the Platinum. So the Tremor really does have a couple of cool things. My only trepidation about some of these cars is just how techie they are. You're operating everything from a touch screen. You've got expensive mirrors with, blind spot monitoring and cameras built into them. And if you are going to be wheeling this car off-road, some of the time, if that goes wrong or you damage a mirror or you smash a taillight or something like that, it's going to be expensive. But overall, these things out of the box, super capable four-wheel drive, which is really, really exciting. And like I said already, maybe this is Ford's dabble into something way bigger, way cooler.
Well, it's pretty clear to see after all that just how impressive this new Ford Everest Tremor is from an off-road prowess perspective, from general street cred and stance, its off-road performance, its on-road handling, and everything in between. This car really is a step into the right direction for Ford. It's really giving us a little bit of hope as the four-wheel drive fraternity that, okay, maybe manufacturers are listening to us. Maybe if we keep pushing for wider, taller, louder, more capable vehicles, we might just get them. And hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, make sure you subscribe. As always, we'll see you next Thursday. A massive shout out to Cam Ben and the entire Ford team for having me out here. Guys, we'll see you next week.